Hi again. I've given a few different talks on books, reviews. I thought I'd try a different one type this today. The ones I've been given one was a classic one, the first one I give you, which is Gormenghast. I've done one on crime fiction. This one is one of the best authors I think we have in this country, Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett writes humorous fantasy stories. He invented a world called Discworld. He's written over 50 novels. Many of them are of the Discworld type. Discworld is a world not like the round world we imagine ours to be, but this is a flat disc. It's carried on the backs of 4 elephants which stand on the back of a turtle. You can imagine a turtle so big that it's beyond the imagination, which swims through space. This is a crazy sort of a world he's invented, and full of crazy characters. One of the characters, this is the first one, is called The Colour of Magic, and this is the first book of his Discworld series. And one of the characters in it is Rincewind. He's a wizard who's absolutely useless. He's no good at anything. He's managed to master one spell, I think it is, and that's it, you know. But one thing he's very good at is running away. He's an excellent runner, and he's running away from danger all the way through the book. There's various other crazy things in it. There's Two Flowers. Two Flowers is a tourist. Tourists are unknown in this place, which is Ankh-Morpork. This is one of the villages, or the towns I should say, in the Discworld. And in Ankh-Morpork suddenly turns up this fella, Two Flowers, who is a tourist. Nobody knows what a tourist is. And along with him he has a trunk. The trunk has legs, and the trunk walks behind him. Now, Terry Pratchett had the idea of this when he saw an American woman in the city of Bath pulling one of these suitcases on wheels behind her, walking along, and one of the wheels got caught in a crack in the pavement, and suddenly this suitcase, or this trunk, took on a life of its own, so as to speak. And so that's where he had the idea of a trunk which had a life of its own, and followed after Two Flowers. Eventually Rincewind, he becomes the owner of this trunk, and it follows him around as well. It's a very funny book. I think the best thing to do is to read some of it to you and see where we go from there. The patrician of Ankh-Morpork smiled, but with his mouth only. "The Hubgate," he says. "The Hubgate, you say," he murmured. The guard captain salutes smartly. "Aye, Lord. We had to shoot the horse before he would stop." I have to explain that Rincewind was on a horse, fleeing with some gold that he had off Two Flowers. He's supposed to be taking this gold from him so that he could act as a guide, but he decided he was so rich now, he'd just take a powder, fly off into the distance, and forget all about Two Flowers. But anyway, he was caught by the guard. We had to shoot the horse before it would stop, which by a fairly direct route brings you here, said the patrician, looking down at Rincewind. "And what have you to say for yourself?" It was rumoured that an entire wing of the patrician's palace was filled with clerks who spent their days collating and updating all the information collected by their master's exquisitely organised spy system. Rincewind didn't doubt it. He glanced toward the balcony that ran down one side of the audience room. A sudden run, a nimble jump, and a sudden hail of crossbow quarrels. He shuddered. That wasn't a good idea. The patrician cradled his chins in a beringed hand, and regarded the wizard with eyes as small and hard as beads. "Let me see," he said. "Outbreaking, the theft of a horse, uttering false coinage. Yes, I think it's the arena for you, Rindswing." This was too much. "I didn't steal a horse. I bought it fairly. But with false coinage. Technically theft, you see." "But those rhino are solid gold." "Rhino?" The patrician rolled one of them around in his thick fingers. "Is that what you call them? How interesting. But as you point out, they are not very similar to dollars." And by the way, the dollars in Ankh-Morpork have very low gold quantity in them, whereas the ones that Rindswing had out of Two Flowers were solid gold. Carrying on. "Well, of course they're not." "Ah, you admit it then." Rindswing opened his mouth to speak, thought better of it, and shut it again. "Quite so. And on top of these, there is, of course, the moral oblique attendant on the cowardly betrayal of a visitor to these shores. For shame, Rindswing." The patrician waved a hand vaguely. The guards behind Rindswing backed away, and the captain took a few paces to the right. Rindswing suddenly felt very much alone. It is said that when a wizard is about to die, Death himself turns up to claim him, instead of delegating the task to a subordinate such as disease or famine, as is usually the case. Rindswing looked around nervously for a tall figure in black. Wizards, even failed wizards, have in addition to rods and cones in their eyeballs, the tiny octagons that enable them to see into the far octarine, the basic colours of which all other colours are merely pale shadows impinging on normal four-dimensional space. It is said to be a sort of fluorescent greenish yellow purple, whatever colour that is. Was that a flickering shadow in the corner? "Of course," said the patrician, "I could be merciful." The shadow disappeared. Rindswing looked up, an expression of insane hope in his face. "Yes," he said. The patrician waved a hand again. Rindswing saw the guard leave the chamber, along with the overlord of the Twin City. He almost wished they would come back. "Come hither, Rindswing," said the patrician. He indicated a bowl of savouries in a low onyx table by the throne. "Would you care for a crystallized jellyfish?" "No?" Said Rindswing. "No." "I want you to listen very carefully to what I am about to say," said the patrician amiably. "Otherwise you will die. In an interesting fashion over a period of time. Please stop fidgeting like that. Since you're a wizard of sorts, you're of course aware that we live upon a world shaped, as it were, like a disc, and that there is said to exist towards the far rim a continent, which though small is equal in weight to all the mighty land masses in this semicircle, and that is, according to ancient legend, is because it is largely made of gold." Rindswing nodded. Who hadn't heard of counterweight continent? Some sailors even believed that the childhood tales and sailed in search of it. Of course they returned either empty-handed or not at all. Probably eaten by giant turtles, in the opinion of more serious mariners. Because of course the counterweight continent was nothing more than a solar myth. "It does of course exist," said the patrician. "Although it is not made of gold, it is true that gold is very common metal there. Most of the mass is made up by vast deposits of octarine deep within the crust." Now it would be obvious to an incisive mind like yours that the existence of the counterweight continent poses a deadly threat to our people here. He paused, looking at Rindswing open mouth. He sighed and said, Do you by any chance fail to follow me?" Said Rindswing. He swallowed and he licked his lips. "I mean no. Well, gold." "I see," said the patrician sweetly. "You feel perhaps that it would be a marvellous thing to go to the counterweight continent and bring back a shipload of gold?" Rindswing had a feeling that some sort of trap was being set. Well, that gives you a pretty good idea of the kind of humour that Terry Pratchett writes. Let me just have a drop my coffee. It's a rather wonderful sort of humour. It keeps you hanging on to it right throughout the book. It's one of these books you pick up and find difficult to put down again. It's a page turner, in other words. So this is just one of the books. This is the first book of the Discworld series. I'd suggest that if you're going to read Terry Pratchett, that you start with this book. Now Terry, as it happens, is suffering from Alzheimer's disease at the moment, but he's still writing. He can't handle a typewriter because of this disease, because his fingers have now forgotten where the keys are, but he has an assistant who types for him, and he also talks into a machine which dictates it to the computer, apparently. And he's still writing, and the last book he wrote was called Snuff. I've got quite a few of these books. I've got at least a dozen of them, but there's a lot more to get, so I've got lots of reading to do when I catch up on Terry Pratchett. As I said, at least 50 books. So until the next time, YouTubers, thank you for watching these videos. Thank you for contributing, and I hope to see you again next time. Take care.